welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us the Honorable Sam Rohrer. He's president of the American Pastors Network and also the Pennsylvania Pastors Network, and we have a lot to talk to him about, and I really appreciate this man's ministry and what he does. And let me encourage you to go to AmericanPastorsNetwork.net and check out what they're doing. And by the way, I hope somebody gets under conviction and starts a chapter in Oregon right away. Hi, Sam. Good to see you, friend.
Hello, Perry. Great to be with you again.
Thank you for what you do. You're doing a great job. And we get a lot of comments for you being on the air, so thank you so much. Well, what do you think of the race so far?
Well, Perry, you know what? You've been involved for a long time as well. I mean, this clearly, in my opinion, is perhaps one of the most, maybe it's the most important presidential election that we've had. And I know, because I've been involved in elections before, and many of your listeners, I mean, we know that every election is important. But to me, this one has some confusing elements to it. It has a lot of controversial elements to it. There's no question about it. But in the end of the day, what I believe, Perry, to be the case is that we're perhaps more than ever, we have an election that is not as much about two people as it is about two futures for our nation, two world views espoused by these two teams, the Clinton-Kaine team and the Trump-Pence team. There are two distinctive world views that are reflected within their policies and their viewpoints, and I think that is perhaps more pronounced now as a choice for the American people than perhaps ever before.
You've come up with a voting integrity checklist, and I want to get into that as we work our way through this morning, but you know what's so interesting is that a lot of people are really caught what to do. Yes, what's on the table here is two worldviews, two political philosophies that are clearly different. I mean, they couldn't be any more contrasting than what we see. And yet, the people at the head of the ticket is creating a lot of controversy. People want to vote for the philosophy, but not the person. And we're seeing that. I'm seeing some raw numbers that are kind of frightening. 44% of evangelicals are still now struggling with voting for Trump. How do we wrestle this, Sam? How do we process through our head?
Well, I think we process through our head by, again, looking at what's the larger picture of what's at stake. I mean, in our nation has walked away from God by and large. We know, we've talked about it on this program. And I believe that to that extent, the type of candidate that we have gotten and have moved forward tends to be more a reflection of the people at large. So we have candidates that are flawed in many respects, but we've never had a perfect candidate. And even if Christ were running today, he would not be elected. The people of this country would reject Jesus Christ if he was at the head of the ticket. Why? Because they rejected him the first time he came. And so it's not that the people of our country want righteousness, Perry. I don't really think they want somebody who's going to be, make them feel comfortable perhaps where they are, but that's not what we have. So we are dealing with two imperfect people. That being said, we look beyond that and say, all right, but one of the two of these are going to lead this country. The world waits to see who will be elected as president of the United States. Is that unusual? No. But is it more concerning for the nations of the world? And I talk with many of them. The answer is perhaps more so than ever, because they perceive them as being two totally different in their direction. So I look and say, all right, well, how you measure the candidate by personal things that they have done, but you really measure them by the positions also that they hold to, positions relative to what they would do in that office that they would lead. What is their view of God? What is their view of morality? What is their view of the matters of marriage and human sexuality? What is their view on nationalism as God would lay out versus a one world government? What is their view between Judeo-Christian ideology as compared to a Sharia Islamic law? And these are totally different. I think we also, Perry, must look at the fact that that these two candidates have two completely worlds apart, different platforms that are behind them. The Democratic platform is everything about a totalitarian, anti-God, evil construct. But the Republican platform this time is perhaps more biblical and reflective of biblical principles than perhaps ever before. So, I look and I say, which one of the candidates are seeking godly counsel? Well, I know Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine are not. They have the Muslim Brotherhood around them. What about Pence and Trump? Well, we know where Mike Pence is with his relationship with the Lord. He's made that clear, and we do know that Donald Trump has his faith advisory team, and I've been talking to members on that team, and there is a very close interaction and seeking of counsel by this man of those who truly do know the Lord. I say these are significant factors. So as I look personally, I say there's not a choice. I know that they're not perfect, but I know that there is one that would fight against everything that I believe as a Christian, everything I hold to as a constitutional citizen of the United States on the one hand, and I know that the one team are going to be everything about doing what they can to protect what we have. So increasingly, it was more tough at one point, but increasingly, Perry, to me, it's very clear.
Okay, there are still those who can't be swayed, and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to sit it out. I don't know if they're going to vote for a third party, or they're going to leave the top of the ticket blank and then vote the rest of the candidates down. How dangerous is that?
Well, I know that there are many who say, well, I know I can't bring myself to say I can't vote. What I say, well, why not? Why, if you don't vote at all, do you have a problem with that? Well, I think I ought to vote. Well, why? Well, I mean, I like to go down that route because the answer is we should vote. We have a civic duty to vote. We as Christian citizens, we have an obligation to vote for that entity. There's two choices. There's not three. Any third choice is a no choice. So practically, there are two choices. One of these two will become president. So are one of them going to be more favorable to the continued presentation of the gospel? Is one of them going to be more favorable to the upholding of the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, our First Amendment, our Second Amendment? The answer is very clear. So if I say that I have a duty to vote, don't I have a duty to consider putting my support where there's going to be a greater likelihood to be defending the very things that we've come to enjoy in our nation as freedom, as compared to not doing anything? Because a no vote at the top is, in fact, a vote for the side that really is all about dismantling and deconstructing our Constitution and moving us to a one world government by their own words in their own mouth. So I don't believe, and I think this is a key point, Perry, can a person logically sit out and say, well, I'm not going to vote because I'm not completely satisfied? I don't believe that before God that position is in fact going to be defensible when we can come at this from the perspective that we've been talking about on this program so far.
All right, before I get into your list of your integrity checklist, let me ask you this. Well, we saw it in 08 and we saw it in 12. Evangelicals did not vote. They just, I'm not, that's a blanket statement. A big portion of them sat it out. We didn't show up. Millions of us didn't show up. We were eligible, we didn't vote. And I'm really concerned with the controversy surrounding this election cycle, that they throw their hands up in the air. We're still looking at this 44% that's struggling. I'm hoping, and that's one thing. The other thing is that Hillary Clinton's disapproval rating and honesty rating and lying rating is 67%. I don't know why that doesn't translate into the polls, but if 44% of our brothers and sisters don't get engaged, we forfeit it again.
Well, Perry, you're right. And see, now, the argument that you just made, some would say, well, that's a pragmatic argument. That doesn't hold water. But the fact of the matter is, what is not accurate about what you just said? When, again, back to this, you have a candidate. I mean, I've termed them this way: the Clinton-Kaine ticket is a pro-Islamic ticket. How do I say that? Because the Muslim Brotherhood is all over their campaign. Tim Kaine is has strong alliances with the Muslim Brotherhood. Huma Abedin, who's right alongside Hillary, is all about Islam and Muslim Brotherhood. It's a very strong, and the principles that they support are all about that. So there is a very strong pro-Islamic ticket. And then there is the Trump-Pence ticket, which is, if you would describe that and say, what are they all about? Well, really, they're all about our nation. They're really all about freedom and the Constitution. They really are talking about the phrase, making America great again. Is there anything wrong with that? Well, no, I hope not. I hope people don't think that there's something wrong with that, because that really has been the hope and the goal of the founders when they first came to America, that this country would be a shining city on a hill and that it would be great, and God did lift it up. So there are two clear choices. Sitting out is basically saying that I am going to lend my support to the one that right now the media tells us is ahead, and they may or they may not be, but certainly for a believer to sit out and say, I think that both of them are so close. How can one say that?
Let me take a break here when we come back. I know you have really struggled hard with this yourself. You've made a checklist, and I want you to kind of highlight this for us and tell us why you did this. We're with the Honorable Sam Rohrer. He's the president of the American Pastors Network, also president of the Pennsylvania Pastors Network. And let me encourage you, maybe the Lord's calling you to head up a chapter in Oregon. Go to AmericanPastorsNetwork.net. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, welcome back to Focus Today, and what an honor to have back with us today the Honorable Sam Rohrer. He's been a legislator and been in public service a lot, and he is president of the American Pastors Network and president of the Pennsylvania Pastors Network, and he's also co-host of the American Pastors National Radio program, Stand in the Gap Today. You can check all this out at their website, AmericanPastorsNetwork.net. Okay, Sam, you've been struggling with this along with all of us, and you put together an integrity checklist. Why did you do this?
Well, Perry, I put together that checklist when I was in the Pennsylvania House years ago, and it was for that purpose, but it has application beyond. When I was in office, I was confronted with, as every other person who's in office, they're confronted with choices that they make, votes that they make on the whole range of things. And really, so much of the impact of those in office is to take and vote for things for reasons other than perhaps right reasons. Intimidation, threats, politically correct considerations, all of those things that really are part of this debate in this election we're in right now. And as a result, I said, you know what? God's word speaks very, very closely and clearly to what ought to be there. And I said, if I had a checklist that I could go down through and say, unless this thing meets this criteria, I'm not going to vote for it. Anyways, that process came out of it. At the end of the day, there were about 25 members of the legislature who adopted this along with me, and we made our votes consistent with this, and it caused us to stand very firmly and very strongly. Purpose that when we stand before God one day, we could say we did our best to make sure that our votes were honoring to you and consistent with our constitutional oath. That was the reason for doing it.
All right. Before I have you go down through some of these, is there a place where people can get this? Is it on the website?
It is on the website on AmericanPastorsNetwork.net.
Okay. All right, let's go through a couple of these you're using as the checklist. Give me a couple of them. Run me through a few of these.
Well, the first one we started with, is it moral? And we put that at the top of the list, Perry, because the application to those who are looking is that when they want to get involved with a person that they may be communicating with, or a person they're going to vote for, be it school board locally or legislature or all the way up to the president, as far as that goes, if there were things that they could qualify that person by asking them, would you support or commit that when you make your decisions or your votes, make them according to this checklist? If a person says, yes, I will make my choices according to this, you can almost be assured that his votes will be morally consistent and biblically and constitutionally consistent. So we started with the idea of asking, is it moral? Because at the end of the day, Perry, there is no choice on anything. There is no matter of legislation. There's no policy matter that does not at the heart have a moral component. There is no such thing as a amoral piece of legislation or policy, regardless what the secular humanists may say. It's not a matter of what moral value, it's a matter of who. So the idea here is it moral, really, according to God's definition of moral? If it's immoral, then you don't even need to go any further. And so many bills and legislations and policies recently adopted out of Washington and the Supreme Court fail on that very first point because they violate universal, biblical, God-given moral truth. So that's the first one.
All right, then is it constitutional?
In that Constitution, reason for saying is a constitutional is that every person in public office right now, the common thing they do is they take an oath. To do what? To support and to defend the Constitution of the state and the national government, federal government. And what is the Constitution? It's our highest order of law. It is the framework around which policies, legislation from federal down to local should be made and be made consistent. And why is that important? Well, because the Constitution is framed on a Judeo-Christian approach to government, and the principles it contains from the First Amendment on down are all biblically based. And that is the only promise that a person makes when they run for office with the people who elected them, and that is their constitutional oath. Unfortunately, many haven't even read the Constitution, Perry, and others don't even know what telling the truth means, so that they may take an oath, but they think it's a formality for getting their paycheck rather than a covenant between them and God and a covenant between them and the people. So is it moral? Gets them on the right track. Is it constitutional? Really keeps them on the right track. And then the rest of the items are really practical applications then.
You got things as, does it preserve individual freedom and responsibility? Does it preserve and strengthen the traditional family? Those are great filters.
Well, they are great filters because even a third one, does it preserve individual freedom and responsibility? Why is that important? A lot of folks don't understand that our experiment in freedom in this republic is based on the concept of self-government. Self-government says we don't need a totalitarian dictatorship in Washington. Matter of fact, we don't want one, and we don't need one. But how do you keep a free nation, a republic? It has to be operating under people submitting themselves, as William Penn said in his frame of government, to the Ten Commandments, the universal law of God. If we limit our actions so that we don't steal a neighbor's property, covet what they own or who they are, we don't lie to them, Ten Commandments. If we do those things and limit our lives, you don't even need a police officer, frankly. But that's what it's all about. So laws can either conflict with, or they can encourage self-government, or they can diminish self-government and enlarge the scope of government itself. And ultimately, that comes back to a view of God. Do I, as a Christian, believe that that government should be God? Absolutely not. Are those in office right now primarily the problem, the establishment folks? Who do they think God is? They think that they themselves are God. And so that's why does this particular law or policy increase and preserve individual freedom and responsibility, or does it detract from that? Is a very logical and a good place to go. And that actually, when we applied that as the third level, it took an awful lot of other bills off the table and said they're not worthy of getting a yes vote.
You could stay all day on that one, because if you weigh every piece of legislation that comes across, does it preserve individual freedom, or does it grow government? I mean, that would be the big throw out right there, wouldn't it?
Well, it would, and see, but why that's so strong, see, is understanding even what's in effect in this election, we've just been talking about. There is a view that says we need more government. There is a view that says, no, we have too much government. There is a view that says there is a God and he's in heaven, moral truth. And there is this other view that says, no, who is God? Matter of fact, we don't care who God is. We can redefine marriage. We can redefine human sexuality. We can redefine the role of government and allow them to steal from the people their earnings and taxes and spending on things that were never a part of government. These are all biblical things, and that's all wrapped up in who a candidate is. So when we look look to presidential candidates, when we look to House or Senate state members or wherever they may be, view them and filter what they say based on these things. This tells you what they will do. And if they go down the road of violating God's morality or the Constitution or the role of individual self-government or the federal government or spending what we don't have, because that was another issue, do we have the money to pay for it, as another one of our points. If they hold to these things, and these candidates are clear, they're worlds apart. This really defines what they will do in office, and this grid is really to help us to evaluate candidates and to help and those who become candidates who become in office to guide their actions. They follow these 9 principles. They'll offer up righteous votes that will make the people rejoice. It will happen.
Let me encourage our viewers and listeners, go to AmericanPastorsNetwork.net and you can print out this voting of the integrity checklist, and you can print this out, these 9 points. They're terrific. You can weigh the candidates through this, you can weigh the issues through this, and especially in Oregon, you know, we have some big issues on the ballot as well, and we have a lot of candidates that deserve your prayerful consideration. Here is a checklist for you to use when considering your vote. So go to AmericanPastorsNetwork.net. Sam, with what time I have left, give me your thinking, your thoughts, your feeling of the American faith community today as it relates to this election cycle. Do you think we're engaged? Do you think we realize that we are in America because we have gotten soft with God? I mean, we all want revival. We all need to pray, but do we really get this? Do you think we're at a moment for the church to really wake up? That's a big question.
Perry, I'll take your last one first. Is this a time for the American church to wake up? You had better believe it. If there's no awakening now, when things are so close, the American church will fall into utter persecution. A totalitarian government always brings persecution to the people. I believe that by and large, the American church, and I can't put a percentage, but far too many, are still trusting in themselves, trusting in their bank accounts, trusting in other things for their security other than what God can do alone. And Perry, even if, and people should know that, I think even if all evangelicals got out and voted, and they voted for the most biblically aligned candidate, it's still going to require, I believe, an intervention of a merciful God in this election, because those who control the portals of power today are those who are opposed to God. We need God's mercy. God's people need to seek it, and then they need to do everything they can to put their support towards the most godly or most biblically oriented team at the top, which is the driving thing, and all the way down through every level of office that they can. That is our obligation. And then we say, Lord, hear our voice, intervene, give us, do your will with America in our lives.
Thank you, Sam. Love your passion. Love what you do. I can't say enough to our viewers and listeners to go to AmericanPastorsNetwork.net and support what he does. We are looking for somebody to head up a chapter of the American Pastors Network in Oregon, and you can correspond with Sam through that, AmericanPastorsNetwork.net. You can check out the integrity checklist. I would hope you do that, print it out, and share it with family and friends. Thank you, Sam. God bless you, pal, and let's stay in touch, okay?
Great to be with you. Thank you.
All right, blessings on you. We'll be right back.